don't create content and just hope that Google finds it. Like, I feel like that's one huge mistake people do because this is something during the helpful content update, I was always like on Reddit and these other platforms. I was always looking at what people were sharing. There were a lot of strategies shared. There's a lot of, okay, contemplations. And then one thing I realized is no one really knows what is going on. It's like you could only speculate. You could only give educated guesses, but no one really knows what is going on. So you could say, oh, write good content. Your content is going to rank. Just do this, and do that. It's not as straightforward as that because anything that has to do with Google is very, very funny. You could be growing one moment and then you could just like go down the next moment and you're wondering what happened. What did I do wrong? Like you are then left to now like guessing and doubting yourself and then just like condemning your work because if you did something wrong, whereas nothing happened, it was just the algorithm playing funny games. So if there's anything, write good content, publish it, and you'd rank is no longer a viable advice. The only thing you need to do is you need to, in as much as you're writing good content, you need to build your brand, have that direct audience, that direct relationship with your audience. You could do this through a lot of platforms. You could, for example, if I were to ask to mention one or two SEO platforms that's quite popular, you could probably mention them easily because why? They're always showing up on LinkedIn. They're always like sharing original research. They're always like being very helpful to the community. All right. So these are like things that helps people to keep it top of mind. So whenever they have a particular problem, they come straight to you because they're like, yes, they know you talk about this. So you're like the expert in this particular situation. So which is why I'm saying you need to build your brand. You need to build that direct audience relationships like through different means, platforms, emails, podcasts, webinars. There are a lot of ways. You need to have consistent messaging across socials. You need to be featured in authoritative sites. These are things that could help you to build your brand. So that's the one takeaway. Don't just write content, build your brand, have like strong brand affinity, and yeah, that's it. Hi, I'm John Iwuozor, and this is SEO in 2025 Additional Insights.
John, what's your additional insight for SEO in 2025?
So my additional insight is we need to prioritize building brand authority and direct audience relationship, especially in this era of AI-powered search and generative experience. That's just it in one sentence.
Okay, so what does brand authority mean to you and why is it so important?
I feel like brand authority is especially important in this time and age because the way people search is getting like it's really different. And I'm going to get a bit technical here and I'm going to like give like a scenario, give like an example. So let's say 2-3 years ago, if you wanted to search for a particular keyword, let's say top of the funnel keyword like what is cybersecurity? So when you search for that keyword, it basically gives you a list of results, search engine results. It's like you have the first link, second link, third link, you have the blue links, all right, and you have multiple pages. So people search for the particular query and then they go and then they pick one or two or three and then they find their answer and that is it. But now, if you're searching for that same keyword, you now have AI overviews just giving you the answer right off the bat. So you have 0 clicks, right, which is a common problem in the SEO community. And now you have things like AI mode, you have LLMs, you have ChatGPT, you have Perplexity, you have all these generative LLMs, you have this stuff. So it's more of like when people, some persons do not longer use Google to look for these queries. They just simply put the query in these LLMs and then they get their answer straightforward. In previous years, the way it was being done, it was that search was deterministic. It was like you create good content and then you rank. All right. So that's what I was trying to explain before. So you're like you are either the first or the second or the third. So you rank really well and then people get to select you. But right now, it's now very probabilistic because LLMs are they're not simply looking for the first or the second or the third. They're looking for something relevant to whatever you have. Now, I've been studying the AI mode patent, which was like I wrote it in the piece for Moz. And then I looked at the behind session, what was happening. And what I discovered was when you search for a particular query, let's say you're using like AI mode to look for a particular, like put in a particular query to look for like a solution, what it does is that it uses like some kind of maths. It converts your words to embeddings and then it uses like cosine similarity or maybe dot products. It's basically maths to just look for documents that is semantically related to whatever you're searching for. So it's not necessarily bringing out the best or the top result. It could bring out something from the 25th page or the 26th page. So it's probabilistic. You might appear, you might not appear, you might do everything right, and then you might still not appear. Basically, I'm saying all this to say that we need to prioritize brand recognition, because you can no longer just depend on search traffic, organic traffic. Like, we need to be looking beyond Google's ecosystem, because search is not probabilistic, it's not deterministic. You could do everything right, and then you would still not appear. So the reason for the brand thing is that you need to find a way to have these direct audience relationships with your customers, with people who are like searching for you. So like, you need to build your brand in such a way that people keep you top of mind. So if they have like that particular query, they could come directly to you. Like, in that way, you get to keep them, and and that's obviously leads to more revenue. So that is basically why I think it is very important. And it is not a new subject, all right? I mean, people talk about this, always talking about this over like the past few years. But I feel like right now, it is so much important, because search is not deterministic, it is probabilistic. So that's why we need to prioritize this. So that's basically what it means to me. That's the best way I could explain it.
That's brilliant. Yeah. So you talked a bit about semantically relevant, about how a brand could potentially be more semantically relevant, and you also mentioned direct audience relationships a little bit as well. I'd like to dive into direct audience relationships as well, and actually how you go about doing that, why it's important, and where you do that, and what impact it has. But in terms of being semantically relevant, how do you make your brand semantically relevant so it's more likely to come up for the phraseology that your customers are likely to search for?
Basically, like, there are like different disciplines now. You have like relevance engineering, you have people saying things like GO, you have AEO, you have LLMO, you have different acronyms every day popping up on LinkedIn and other platforms, and everyone is talking about how do you get your content to be seen on these LLMs and all. Now, there are different techniques where you could build your content so that it pops up every time people are like searching for a particular query. It pops up as a solution. So there are different ways. There are like chunking strategies where you have to create bit sites, where you have to structure your content in such a way that it could be extracted easily by LLMs. So that's like chunking strategies. There are other ways where you could use like tools to help you see if you are trying to fulfill like the intent of the user. Because one thing that I've noticed, one thing that I also learned from this patent is that when you are now, because right now that we have this AI mode and everything, now it's that we need to cover the full intent space, not just the search query. So let's say a user was searching for something like best shoes. All right. Now, it's not just going to give you the best shoes. It's going to give you like, it's going to do like a query fan out, and it's going to get a list of semantically related keywords or questions, and then it's going to provide the answers to all these things. So it's more of like, when we're trying to create content, we need to create content that covers everything. It like covers the whole, the full intent. So it's more of like the best shoes for this, the best shoes for this particular use case. How do you select the best shoes? And a lot of different, it's like topic cluster, but it's like an advanced topic cluster. That's the best way I could describe it.
How do you determine what the full intent is if it's not incorporated as part of the phrase that someone's searching for?
I mean, that's why there are tools. There are like tools that can help you to just like to get out these queries. Like every day on LinkedIn, you see a lot of like SEOs coming up with tools that could help you to get like these queries. And then if you use Perplexity, I've done it before. You look for a particular query, you could see what it's searching for. So it shows you the list of related keywords it's searching for. So it does that, and then you could see, okay, this is how you could probably structure your content in such a way that you can answer every single question that is popping up. You could basically use tools to help you to work it out.
So essentially, when you're using a kind of AI search engines to actually have a look at keyword phrases, you're looking at the workings that AI tool goes through in order actually to come up with the answer, and you're going through the workings to actually determine what the likely relationships are between what the person originally searched for and what the tool is looking for, based upon what other people have searched for in the past.
Yeah. Basically, that's why I said it's probabilistic, because you are basically taking this particular intent. It's like, okay, I have this particular query that someone is searching for, and you are basically trying to cover everything around that query. Because from that query, there could be like a lot of similar queries related to that. So yes, like I said, it's like topic cluster. It's not exactly new. It's not like anything new. It is not exactly novel, but it's more of like, it's now very much more important, because there's like a lot of similarity. Like I said, the way users are searching is now changing. So we need to adapt to that. So we need to always to look at all these similar queries that is around just one query. And then, like I said, you have tools that can help you with it, tools that are like being created that can help you with looking for these things, or maybe you're doing like some sort of research and all, and then you can find a way to check it. And there's like also like, let's say Screaming Frog that could help you to check, okay, how you could look for like content that is like semantically related, that's help you to search for things like that. All right, there's like just multiple tools around this.
So it's, I mean, you touched upon perplexity. You mentioned Screaming Frog there as well, but you also used the phrase, tools that have been created, and it was a bit of a tease there in terms of there are so many different possibilities out there. What are 2 or 3 other top tools that you use to actually discover semantically related topics, and how do you actually use them as part of a workflow?
Well, I'm not exactly the tools type. I'm more of like the technical type, where I rather use like work on Python codes to look for something similar.
Okay.
All right. But I know one common tool that was created by Mike King is Qforia. So I've used that, and that was like really helpful. And then I know there are like other like tools by, let's say, Moz and SEMrush and Ahrefs, and they're like creating these things that could help you to see a lot of like related queries. So I'm not very like vast in the tools that can be used, but I do know that if you were to search for these things, you would definitely see them. All right, you would definitely see them. So yeah.
Understood. Yeah, but so essentially, as a principle, it's absolutely key to understand the hidden intent behind what someone's searching for.
Yep. Not just the exact intent, but also looking at surrounding intent. So it's more of like you get the query and then you are predicting what could they possibly search for next. All right, you're covering every single thing around that. Like you just like trying to be as exhaustive as possible. Obviously, you cannot answer every single thing, but it's just like trying to be as exhaustive as possible in such a way that you answer all your queries, and whenever they search for that particular query on AI mode, or Google is able to recommend your content to them as someone who's like covered this, because like I said, it uses maths. It's not human. It does not find it. It's not like, oh, I'm gonna rate this content and then I think this content sounds nice or everything. No, it looks at keywords. It looks at, is this query related to this document? Is it related to this document? And that's why you have people using these tools to check if their content has like checking how the level of semantic similarity with the particular query.
And you also touched upon the importance of direct audience relationships. So what do you mean by that? And how do you take advantage of that?
Yeah, so away from the technical part of it, like I said, since search it's no longer guaranteed. It has not been guaranteed for a very long time, ever since the helpful content update. Because since the helpful content update, it came up and then it's destroyed a lot of hardworking sites. I could say I was one of them, but I know a lot of sites that did not deserve the whole thing that happened, because there were a lot of innocent sites that were creating great quality content and they were like really destroyed. And I think that was because Google was trying to combat AI spam, like automated content. But in doing that, they destroyed a lot of innocent sites in the process. Ever since then, I think that was since 2022 or 2023, I realized that you cannot depend on Google for traffic. You cannot depend on Google for traffic. It's very dicey, because you could be you could have 1 million traffic in 1 month and you could be down to 50,000 the next month. So which is why you need to build that direct audience relationship. And the way you do that, one of my favorite ways of doing this is building a community. It's like when you have this thing like webinars, podcasts, just like this podcast right here, right? So you are building this direct relationship with people. It's like you are finding ways to get to your audience directly, and you are building beyond the Google ecosystem. So you're not doing things in order to suit Google. You are doing things directly for your audience. You are trying to get directly to your audience, not hoping that they come through Google, but you are getting directly to them. One way you can do that is via building community. That's my favorite way of doing that. I own a media brand, so this is one way I'm doing it.
How do you measure the ROI of building a community? And is it important to try and build a community on a platform that you control, or does it matter if the community just exists on a third-party platform, and then the fact that they're engaging with your brand and feeling good things about your brand is all that matters?
I mean, you should build it not on third-party platforms, all right? Because, like I said, you should be very careful about building anything on third-party platforms. And I'm still going to use myself as an example. I was building this community and I had an Instagram page, and then the Instagram page got banned. And I had to start from scratch because there was nothing I could do. So when you're bidding on these third-party platforms, anything could happen, all right? It's not guaranteed. So, but when you have like, let's say emails, you have like direct access to your audience without like, irrespective of whatever platform you use, that you can always still maintain that relationship with your audience. I think that's what you need to look out for. Like emails is like a very common thing. Basically, I'm just saying anything that allows you to keep that relationship with your audience without having to be at the mercy of any third-party platform. That is something you should look out for. And there are a lot of ways you could try to measure this. Okay, like I said, there are also still tools that you could use to measure this. You could measure like your branded search volume. You could measure like your share of voice, how you feel compared to competitors. You could measure your how people are like searching for your brand, like social media mentions. I mean, these are like some ways. It's not, for me, I feel it's not exactly tangible. You cannot like measure every exact metric, but it's more of like everything you do, or it's like when you've seen like an increase in your community, increase in growth, increase in, let's say, if you're like a B2B SaaS brand, increase in sales, increase in revenue, you know you're doing something correctly. So that's the way I like to think about it.
John, you shared a lot of thought-provoking insights today. What's the key takeaway from the tip you shared today?
The key takeaway is don't create content and just hope that Google finds it. Like, I feel like that's one huge mistake people do, because this is something during the helpful content update, I was always like on Reddit and these other platforms. I was always looking at what people were sharing. There were a lot of strategies shared. There's a lot of, contemplations. And then one thing I realized is no one really knows what is going on. It's like you could only speculate. You could only give educated guesses, but no one really knows what is going on. So you could say, oh, write good content. Your content is going to rank. Just do this, and do that. It's not as straightforward as that, because anything that has to do with Google is very, very funny. You could be growing one moment and then you could just like go down the next moment and you're wondering what happened. What did I do wrong? Like you are then left to now like guessing and doubting yourself and then just like condemning your work because if you did something wrong, whereas nothing happened. It was just the algorithm playing funny games. So if there's anything, write good content, publish it, and you'd rank is no longer a viable advice. The only thing you need to do is you need to, in as much as you're writing good content, you need to build your brand, have that direct audience, that direct relationship with your audience. You could do this through a lot of platforms. You could, for example, if I were to ask to mention one or two SEO platforms that's quite popular, you could probably mention them easily because why? They're always showing up on LinkedIn. They're always like sharing original research. They're always like being very helpful to the community. All right. So these are like things that helps people to keep it top of mind. So whenever they have a particular problem, they come straight to you because they're like, yes, they know you talk about this. So you're like the expert in this particular situation. So, which is why I'm saying you need to build your brand. You need to build that direct audience relationships, like through different means, platforms, emails, podcasts, webinars. There are a lot of ways. You need to have consistent messaging across socials. You need to be featured in authoritative sites. These are things that could help you to build your brand. So that's the one takeaway. Don't just write content, build your brand, have like strong brand affinity, and yeah, that's it.
John Iwuozor is a freelance content marketer, and you can find him over at johniwuozor.com. John, thanks so much for adding your additional insight to SEO in 2025.
Thank you so much for having me.
I've been your host, David Bain, and you've been listening to SEO in 2025 Additional Insights, a Majestic series that complements the original podcast, video series, and book. Find out more at SEOin2025.com.